Oh.
Okay, we have a few people still coming in. Just looking at the participants list, the number of participants that we have. Just a few moments. I know that the plenary session just ended. So I'll just go on mute for 2 more minutes. Okay, understanding that we have only a certain amount of time to go, I would like to begin the panel session. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the panel session, Dementia and Design, Co-Design's role in improving patient-oriented research practices. My name is Waqar Mughal. I am the Program Director for Data at Health Research BC in the BC Support Unit. And thank you for attending, and I'll be your moderator. There will be a live question and answer section after this presentation. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom side of your screen to ask questions of the speakers. When submitting your question, please be sure to identify to which speaker or group your question is directed. As we use social media, if you are going to do that, or if you are going to look on social media, we are using the hashtag PPF2022. Please use those about any tweets or postings about the conference. For any technical questions, please go to the technical support button that can be found toward the bottom of the menu on the left within the conference platform. I will now pass it over to the panel to begin the conversation.
Thank you. Hi, everybody, and good morning. My name is Kaylee Raber, and I'm the director of the Health Design Lab at Emily Carr. And I'm thrilled to be presenting today with Garima Sood and Morgan Martino, two research assistants in the lab. I want to begin by acknowledging that we are presenting today from the unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. I think this is particularly important to acknowledge in the context of the work that we do in health, as due to the impacts of colonization, Indigenous people today continue to face health inequities, systemic racism, discrimination, and stigmatization in our communities and within our healthcare system. It's apparent that we have a lot of work to do, and one critical way to do that is by making sure that we're including and allowing Indigenous people to lead in research and in health systems service design. I think everyone here is at this conference because we want to put patients first, and we value the inclusion of patients and people with lived experience, and we want them to be included in decision-making and research and quality improvement projects. So today we're here to talk about co-designing with people in long-term care and people with dementia. As I mentioned, I'm the director of the Health Design Lab, which is a research and design center at Emily Carr University. And we use participatory design methods to catalyze, support, and amplify initiatives that address complex health challenges. Much of our work is really about fostering new ideas, improving systems and services, and thinking about how we can amplify the voices and the stories of people with lived experience. Though not exclusively focused on dementia and long-term care contexts, much of our current work is focused in these areas, and we're going to talk about that today. Common across all of our projects is the belief that we can use design methods and mindsets to help engage people with dementia and in long-term care in initiatives that impact their lives, whether that's research, quality improvement work, or the design of new technologies and apps. People with lived experience should be at the forefront of those collaborations, and we think that designers have a role to play in allowing that to happen. Design is inherently collaborative. We never work alone. The Health Design Lab is a dynamic team that adapts to meet different projects and research needs. At our core, our team includes a range of design students who work as research assistants, and they are led by a team of HDL staff, design faculty, and research associates. And we form collaborative teams with our partners and the communities that they serve. And our partners range from nonprofits, health authorities, startups, other academic institutions, and we're always looking to really sort of form a team and move forward together. Today, we're going to talk about these 4 projects that have been involved and have used participatory design methods in long-term care and with people with dementia. But before we get into sort of specific examples, we want to give a little more context to co-design and our approach in general. Over the last sort of few decades, there's been a similar movement across healthcare, across research, and across design, from expert-driven work towards more patient and people-centered and people-driven work. So likely many of you are familiar about this sort of shift in healthcare and this shift in research with efforts like patient-oriented research. And we've seen similar shifts in the field of design, moving from human-centered design, which was still very much about designing for, to participatory design, which is about designing with, to community-based design, which is about design by the community. So I've used the word co-design several times, and so I think before we go any further, we should talk about what we mean. I think this term has gained increasing popularity in healthcare in the last few years, but it can mean different things to different people, and it can be kind of hard to grapple with. And so in the Health Design Lab, we are designers. We're trained professional designers and design students who have been training for 4 years. And so to us, co-design is a practice and a process that includes people who are going to be impacted by an outcome and including them in the process. And for us, that process includes the use of creative and participatory methods to help facilitate dialogue and ideation and prototyping and testing and implementation of potential outcomes. So to us, having a group of people in a meeting or interviewing people, doesn't hit the sort of participatory level of co-design that we're usually striving for. And in the presentation today, I actually prefer to use the word participatory design to describe our work, which involves creative methods. And I try to reserve co-design for projects that are truly co-done, in which people with lived experience are not just providing feedback or involved in key phases or key workshops, but when they actually play a role in decision-making and implementation. And so in today's presentation, we're going to use the term participatory design because it applies to all of the projects we're sharing, while some of them really were co-designed and at that scale and at that level. And I think it's just important to acknowledge when something really is co-designed and when it's collaborative and participatory. So there's different levels and ways in which people can be included or participate in a project. And one way I think is not necessarily better than another. Different forms of participation are valid for different kinds of projects. And so in our view, co-design sits on the far end of that, where people are really making decisions and implementation is in their hands. And we typically, our projects sit in sort of the collaborate, empower phases that you might see on this diagram. So co-design and participatory design Teams tend to work best when there are these three parts. There are people with lived experience involved. There are professionals who are working with people with lived experience, often healthcare professionals in this case. And then there are provocateurs. And as designers, that's where we see our role. And so as provocateurs, we come to projects as outsiders. We bring curiosity, a willingness to learn from the people who are working within. We bring ideas from across other contexts as ways to reimagine how things could be. And we also have an important role in being able to help level power dynamics and challenge professionals who are in the room in a way that can be really difficult for people with lived experience to do. And then as designers, we bring creative and participatory approaches that maybe are not common in healthcare. And so like I've said, we use a range of participatory design methods and creative activities to help support self-expression and story sharing and dialogue. And we're always creating new tools and activities for every project to be able to do that. And so you'll see very different examples of how we do that in the projects we're about to show you. So we find it's very useful and important that making is a really useful and important tool when engaging with co-designers and in projects. And this is sort of, I think, a key role of designers. I'll just share a couple of key quotes here that I think help to articulate this. Making is used to help co-design participants to explore, reflect, and consider experiences, share, articulate, and express them, and see how they compare and contrast with the experiences and perspectives of others. And the use of making stems from the assumption that people in the process hold the relevant knowledge, but sometimes they're not explicit sources of information. They're limited in ways of expression and communication, and many experiences and knowledge are tacit and embedded in the everyday. So part of our thinking is that people have the knowledge, but sometimes it's hard to get it out, or it's hard to really bring it to the surface, and that making can help to do that. And we've definitely also seen that making can be really powerful with people in long-term care and people with dementia to help them express themselves and communicate their needs and wants in different ways. All right, so with this in mind, now we're going to jump into showing you some examples of how our design approach to patient-oriented research has taken place. So the first project we're going to talk about is called Come Alive. And this was a multi-year collaboration with Vancouver Coastal Health. And this project started in 2018 with a key question. How can we shift the culture of care by uplifting the perspectives of people living in care homes, creating space for them to shape the future of their care? So long-term care homes have a history of being medicalized, institutionalized, and this project was interested in looking at how do we shift to a more social model of care. And so working collaboratively with people living in care homes, their families and staff, we've been co-facilitating the Come Alive Culture Change Initiative with Vancouver Coastal Health through a really emergent and collaborative process since 2018. And this initiative explores ways in which participatory design methods can help to amplify the voices of people in care and their loved ones to drive organizational change. The project began with a phase where we wanted to really hear directly from residents. And we went around to a series of care homes and we're asking two key questions. What is most important to you? And what does good care look like? And through creative workshops, people in care homes were reconnected with their personal stories, their current lived experiences, and they shared their desires for the future. And we used different visual prompts to help encourage participation and offer new ways for participants to share their thoughts and experiences. And during group discussions, residents were able to support each other, contrast and affirm each other's experiences. And we were able to see a real range of perspectives across care homes in the region. Through all of the information that we gathered, we were then able to distill that information into 5 key focus areas and guiding questions for Vancouver Coastal Health and sort of a culture change strategy for them. And so what we heard through all of that work was that good care is about recognizing and supporting ability. It's about having a sense of purpose. It's about focusing on relationships and conversations. It's about individual needs and care. And it's about the capacity to have flexibility and spontaneity. And so what we ended up doing was we created a short film to share back what we had heard from residents with staff. And the idea was to use this video to then facilitate additional workshops and conversations. So I think we're going to get Marion now to help show a short clip from that video so you can get a sense of that. Marion, should I stop sharing screen?
I don't really need to be in the kitchen, but just be part of some of the cooking is great.
I didn't know someone could be interested in my stories.
Hey, I'm here. I'm alive.
I love to play games with other people, even when I'm not very good at it, or if it's just talking about games I used to play. The human connection is important to me.
I was pretty upset when I first moved in here, but some staff stuck with me and we are friends now.
Activities can give the boost, but relationships can give purpose.
You never know when there is a soul out there that matches your own.
I love playing the piano. I think I used to be quite good at it, but it's been so long since I even touched the keys. I think I just need some encouragement and someone willing to help me try again.
I fell in love with watercolors at the art night in my care home, and we had a small exhibition. I was shocked, but someone actually bought my painting. While that part was nice, I was just happy my skill was recognized.
I might need help, but I would appreciate it if you asked me first. Disease doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means it takes time.
Thanks, Marion. I'll share my screen again. Okay. So from there, we ended up holding a 100-person event in fall of 2019, back when that was a thing. And we kicked off that event by sharing this video with staff and then engaging them in a series of activities around cultural change. So it was really important to start by elevating and sharing voices of residents and then engaging staff in that dialogue, because their perspective is also very critical to any kind of culture shift. And here you can see an example of one of the activities that we did using a tree as a metaphor to facilitate dialogue, talking about understanding the roots of a home, thinking about what's immediate and what's imperative, to moving towards sort of envisioning what could grow and what dreams could exist, and more blue sky thinking. And here's just a few more examples of the kinds of activities and the kind of, I think, spirit and energy that was in the room at the time. Go ahead, Morgan.
All right. Yeah, so concurrent to these workshops, we were also working on creating a game that could be used to re-engage with people living in care and elicit further insights on their care experience. And this is a bit of a journey of how the game is meant to be played in groups facilitated by one of us. And so this game used sensorial objects or evocative objects as conduits for conversation. And each object was meant to evoke memories through tactile, visual, and sonic reminders of memories and experiences from their past. Interacting with these objects helped begin conversations that could lead to further insights about how different memories from the past could affect and inform people's current feelings in their care homes. And on screen, you can see a selection of objects that we included in the final version of the game. During its design process, we invited people from care homes to play with the prototypes of the game and help shape its flow and use and outcomes. And then, of course, March 2020 hit, and COVID had quite a dramatic impact on long-term care homes as it did the rest of the world. And we had to pause a lot of our work and try to pivot. So we worked to find different accessible methods for participation and research and co-creation that could happen online in virtual workshops and virtual spaces. We recognized that access to working with people in care homes wasn't possible and that staff were completely overburdened. So our team looked to how we could contribute to this initiative in other ways. We realized that the restrictions on visitation during COVID were extremely hard on both people in care and their families. And so we looked to gather ideas from family members to share with other families about how to best connect with loved ones in the best ways possible given the current constraints that were happening. And this is a screenshot from one of the Zoom workshops that we held with families back in fall of 2020. These workshops gave space for family members to support each other and affirm each other's experiences with prompts and facilitation that encouraged generative thinking and enabled family members to look for creative possibilities for connection using the tools and resources that were available to them.
Thanks, Morgan. So that was a really quick overview of what was really quite a complex project and collaboration, but we wanted to give you just a glimpse into how we work as designers with and within organizations, introducing design methods and helping to support large initiatives. And now we're going to talk about another example. So the Come Alive, project was working at a really large scale. And so in contrast to that and sort of simultaneous to that, we also began exploring sort of more small scale localized interventions that would achieve ultimately some of the same culture change goals, but in a more focused individual care home way. And so we ended up developing the Perspectives program. And this is a program that brings together design students in a class with people in long-term care through an intergenerational storytelling program with co-designed publications as the output. And so this project began in response to this question of how can we leverage existing resources in the community to create meaningful opportunities for engagement and storytelling for people in long-term care. And so in this case, we looked at our own university and what kind of resources do we have that we can leverage. And so to us, that was communication design students. And so Perspectives is a course-based program at Emily Carr. It brings together design students with people in long-term care for intergenerational exchange and storytelling. It takes place over a 12-week semester, and it includes 6 visits, about 1 hour each, involving small groups of students and residents. And together they share stories, and this leads to the production of little printed booklets that feature those stories. And the purpose of Perspectives is to create an infrastructure for meaningful intergenerational exchange and social interaction between students, between people living in care, their families, and care staff, both through sort of the process of story gathering and interaction, and through the process then of being able to distribute those stories in final printed publication. And through our research, we have found that this program can help to give voice to people living in long-term care, providing an opportunity for creative and emotional expression, stimulation of positive memories, and engagement in unique and meaningful activities that can reopen their stories while acknowledging their values and what they can contribute. And simultaneously, the program is offering our students learning opportunities in storytelling and co-design and participatory design. And so it really creates a strong mutual benefit that allows the program to really be sustained. And so this is essentially the brief, the assignment that students are given. And we say in teams, you need to design a series of creative activities to get to know your co-designers and to gather stories and experiences that they wish to share. So that's sort of part one, figure out how to get to know each other. And then part two is creatively present those stories in a unique format appropriate to the content for sharing with other people. And when we could meet in person, this is what the program and the interactions look like. It was typically 2 or 3 residents paired with two or three students. And the emphasis was really on a relationship building, getting to know each other. It's not about interviewing residents, it's about working collaboratively to create something and getting to know each other. And the residents are an active part of the decision-making and the direction of the work. Students are initially responsible for figuring out how to facilitate the discussion, how to facilitate getting to know each other. But as sessions progress, they start to take, residents start to sort of take charge, and it becomes a much more collaborative process. Here's an example of the kinds of activities that students have come up with to get to know people. Here, this woman is pulling words out of a hat, and then, or not a hat, a box, and she's placing them on a target based on whether they're really important to her or less important to her. And if I recall, in this case, she had chosen words like respect, and then she drew sharks out of the hat, and then she drew kanji. And so it's a really wide range of topics that are covered and that really allow us to explore a lot about people in not sort of like necessarily a linear recount of somebody's history. Another example of a game from students looking at what do you do on typical days at typical times, just getting to know each other in different ways. Groups often use photography to help elicit conversations, and sometimes, using random prompts to help spark and make connections to personal stories. Collage and painting are popular approaches to conversations, and games, just making things fun and finding ways to connect. I will briefly show you a couple of the examples of the kinds of outputs. So this was a book called Moments. It's conceptually, it's relatively simple. It's key stories or moments from the lives of the individuals in that group, and students have illustrated those. And this particular story is about Penny, and it's a humorous account of an incident as a young waitress. And I think, it's just a nice example. I think you can see at a glance just sort of the humor and the lightheartedness that can fit into some of these stories. Another example, this one has a sort of red thread that wove through all of the pages of the book and talked about how these residents kind of connect in the middle. And this is Lois Ann's story of teenage rebellion and falling in love with her husband. This was an all-female group that was sort of inspired by punk zines like Riot Girl. And so all of the stories are centered around the theme of female empowerment. And like all good fanzines, it came with like some swag and badges and patches and stickers. And there was a punk manifesto that they wrote together at the back. And yeah, just speaking of unexpected outcomes, not every story focuses on the past. This group generated a new story. This is Cat Power. It was a comic book, and it sees residents take the role of superheroes with special powers determined by sort of things that they had talked about from their past. And they are on a journey to recover their stolen cats in Vancouver. So this group wrote a fictional story, and they spent quite a bit of time laughing as they worked, which was lovely. And then with the pandemic, last January, we managed to run the program virtually. So this is Purdy Pavilion at UBC. And we had students connect with people in long-term care through Zoom. And you can see they still managed to figure out how to do some creative activities, how to play games, and we were able to physically deliver the final outputs to them. So that there was still that component. And I'm currently teaching the course this semester, and because of the advantages of virtual, we're actually collaborating with a care home on the Sunshine Coast right now at Shorncliffe. We also, with virtual, we opened up the assignment and we said it didn't need to be a book, it could be any format. So this is an example of one group that really took that and ran with it, and they ended up creating beautiful embroidered quilts for their residents that featured different symbols and quotes of things they had talked about. And I don't have a great picture, but this bent wood object is actually a lap table for somebody to have a table over their bed. And it has a game, a getting to know you game, and more information about those residents laser engraved in the top.
All right. So thank you, Kaylee. I am Garima, and as Kaylee mentioned, I'm a research assistant at the Health Design Lab. And interestingly enough, I have worked on nearly all of the projects presented today. So it's been really interesting participating across the board on different projects that follow different methods and priorities and how to engage people living with dementia. The project that I will present now is called the What Matters Project, and it was organized in collaboration with Lillian Hung, who is an incredible researcher at UBC. And in this project, we were designing a digital solution for people living with dementia in care settings. We were tasked to design and develop an app that uses personalized content to bring comfort to people living with dementia. The goal of the app is to support staff in care settings where they can share personalized visual, audio, and video content with people living with dementia to comfort and calm them in moments of distress. Through this app, we also wanted to strengthen relationships between care partners, staff, and residents, and support staff who might be overburdened in care settings. The project had a pretty quick timeline, 6 months from research to development, or maybe a little bit more. We worked with multiple stakeholders, which made the process complicated, but also really interesting. We had asked ourselves, how might we engage staff, residents, and people living with dementia in the design of this digital application and other new technologies? We wanted to ask these stakeholders some broader questions to better understand their experiences and context, and then move into designing details of the app. So as you can see here, there was a whole lot of preparation that went into organizing this project that had so many different stakeholders and different ways of engaging. We started with virtual workshops with care partners, asking broad questions like, what does comfort mean to you? How do you bring comfort to your loved ones in care settings? Care partners know their loved ones well and gave us really great insights on what makes their loved ones who are living in care settings feel comforted when they are in distress. Through these workshops, we gathered insights on how care partners prioritize care for their loved ones. And you can see some of the kind of fun brainstorming activity that we did virtually in this photo. We then did virtual workshops with staff in 2 care settings. Through these conversations, we were able to understand the staff experience in the homes, the time constraints they work under, and what they prioritize in their work. We also learned about different ways that they bring comfort to residents living with dementia and respond to them in moments of distress. Moving forward, we also had conversations with residents in care homes. We were able to use this really nifty device that's visible in this photo. It's a robot called Dorothy that we could maneuver around in the care home remotely to interact with people in their care home spaces. So it was a really fun way of engaging with residents in care settings. And through these conversations, we found that we found out about the types of content that residents prefer, those that usually make them happy, bring memories, make them feel proud, and really connected to family and loved ones. So all of these insights helped us design the app and all of the individual features that were incorporated in it. We had moved from asking broad questions to now narrowing down the design features and really thinking about each of the different elements that went into the app. So you can see in this page, designed for the app, it shows information about a resident, their interests, what brings them joy, pride, and comfort, as well as some content that would have been shared by residents, care partners, and family. And then in the next frame, you will see what a screen might look like when content is being shared with residents. There is information shared about the displayed content. There are notes left by family members. There is also a way to leave a response and how the resident might have felt looking at the content. Lots of different kind of feedback ways of embedding information in this space. After creating these designs, we tested how this app will be used by staff in resident care settings. And we tested these app frames and the usability of different features in a care setting environment. Insights gathered through testing is used to make the app even more effective and user-friendly. Ideally, this process is iterative. We gather information, we apply it to design, then test it, apply more feedback, bring it back to the residents or our stakeholders for testing, and then shift design further until we get something that we are satisfied with. So this project is ongoing, and there have been multiple lessons learned throughout. In this project, we considered what real co-design looks like when done in collaboration with partners with lived experience. This project was co-designed, I feel like, in the early phases where we were imagining scenarios of comfort and with the stakeholders together, especially care partners and staff. Eventually, though, we started abstracting our stakeholders. We were developing these personas to understand their motivations, needs, and challenges. So we worked with these abstracted personas in our minds instead of fostering deeper connections with our collaborating stakeholders. We engaged them for feedback on our design, but the core design work of shaping the app and its features was done by the design and the development team. I think, as Kelly said before, real co-design that works in collaboration with partners throughout the span of a research project is achieved when done slowly with intention and great amount of communication back and forth with partners. We also wondered if co-design can be achieved when we start projects with pre-existing assumptions and intervention priorities. When we went into this project, we went in knowing that we were creating an app and generally what the app would do. It would contain personalized content that staff would share with residents to calm them in moments of distress. We already knew that. However, we believe that prioritizing and envisioning the design goals of the project could be also set in collaboration with care partners to ensure that they are entrenched in the process throughout. So now I will share a project that feels closer to co-design that started from the beginning to the end of the project. This project is called the Collaborate, Gather, Share project, and it started in October 2020 in collaboration with the Alzheimer's Society of BC. And the goal of the project was to make dementia research more dementia friendly. We started the project with no pre-existing assumptions, without any set guidelines or types of interventions that we would develop. Instead, we set priorities in collaboration with researchers, people living with dementia, care partners, to envision ways that we can achieve dementia-friendly research. This was a 2-year project that had various different phases. It was a generative process where each phase was informed by research and practice-based findings from the previous phase, and lessons from each phase really fed into each other. We started the project by conducting a set of workshops to explore the question, how might we make research spaces more dementia friendly so that they foster meaningful collaboration and inclusion of people with dementia? We invited researchers, designers, people living with dementia, and caregivers to the workshop, and we had hoped to develop a shared understanding about existing practices, challenges, and challenges of dementia-friendly research. Some of the key themes that came out of this research, which I will actually skip because I think we're getting closer to time, basically all of the things that we learned from these workshops were put into a workbook that we had designed, which was to be geared for researchers. We created this workbook so that researchers could look inwards, find inspiration in their daily experiences of being in community, and bring those learnings to research spaces. It was also a way for researchers to really reflect on existing assumptions and research practices to encourage new paradigms and ways of working that are dementia-friendly. And these are some of the pages from the workbook. In designing the workbook, we were primarily working with researchers, so the workbook was geared for researchers. But in the second half of the project, we wanted to center people with lived experiences, including those living with dementia. So we invited a dementia advocate, Myrna Norman, to our project, who had a vision to hold a panel discussion to amplify lived experience of people living with dementia and showcase that people living with dementia are strong, have agency, opinions, and have lots to contribute to research teams. So Myrna, our co-designer, hosted a panel discussion that invited a group of her peers to ask questions around how they would like to be perceived and involved in research and other similar projects. The conversation went into many directions. The group spoke about stigma and other related challenges they experienced. They also talked about joy, capacity, and inspiration they get from different creative activities they're a part of. Most importantly, they spoke about how they would like to be treated in research and other projects and how they can foster connection with researchers and peers living with dementia through research collaborations and activities. So as a way to, again, we got a lot of great insights from these panel discussions. Some of these were that we should be emphasizing community relationships that can emerge in research spaces. We should be developing research roles for people with lived experience where they are considered as research partners and collaborators as opposed to subjects. Most importantly, we learned that there was missing connection between those who want to participate in research and researchers. So to kind of take these insights and put it into practice, we've created a pamphlet. This is a pamphlet that focuses on really sharing what research can be that is collaborative and centered around people with lived experience as experts in research and collaborators in research. And this pamphlet, we hope, would be shared with folks that are interested in participating in research so that they are more excited about these sorts of participation. So to further focus on this piece on developing connection between researchers and people that are interested in participating in research, we are organizing a research symposium. The research symposium will be hosted by people living with dementia. It will include research presentations by those with lived experiences collaborating in current research projects. So this is our little plug for the symposium that will take place on May 10th from 10:30 to 12 p.m. And we hope that you can join us to discuss and shape what meaningful public participation in research could look like. We invite you to learn about how people with dementia can be part of research teams that amplify lived experience, expertise, and shape relevant and meaningful outcomes. To share some last reflections, this entire project has felt like something closer to co-design. The process was led by our partners. They were setting priorities and inspiring methods. There was a consistent back and forth, but they were leading, facilitating, guiding, while we were supporting, learning from them, and organizing. Together, we were co-creating and co-shaping outcomes.
Thanks, Garima. We'll just wrap up here with a few final thoughts. One is just very quickly, I think a lot of times people think about participatory design or co-design workshops as like the thing. And we really want to emphasize that the work that we do while the workshops are very important, in order to have a successful workshop, there's a ton of work that comes beforehand and afterwards to build relationships and set the stage for good collaboration in those moments. We also just want to end with K.A. McKercher in her book, Beyond Sticky Notes, which we've quoted a few times now. She talks about 4 key principles for co-design. It's about sharing power, prioritizing relationships, using participatory means, and building capacity. And that is something that we are striving to work towards on all of our projects. And our very last slide, since I think many people will be talking about those values, but less common is probably the use of making. And so again, we just want to emphasize that through making, we can level power, we can reduce jargon, we can enable self-expression, we can help give tangible presence to participant contributions, and we can help to shift from explicit to tacit knowledge. And with people with dementia and people in long-term care, we find that people are capable, they are ready, and they are excited to engage with these methods. And these methods can support their engagement in ways well beyond sort of interviews and conversations. So we will end there for today. Thank you very much for listening. We might have a couple of minutes for questions.
Yeah, I think we have just a few, but I do want to thank all of you for your presentations, Kaylee, Garima, and Morgan. I think it's like, I'd just like to say that it was really wonderful to see the sort of work that your team has been doing and engaging with residents and elders. I think that there's more work to be done there, and I see a lot of potential collaborative opportunities. There's work that we're doing in long-term care, and I know there's other researchers as well. So I'm really optimistic about what we have in front of us. So thank you very much. I do want to open it up for questions and answers for a few moments. We got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and there is a session, or there's a question in the question box. How did online co-design activities go for you with the population you were working with or working for?
Yeah, I can speak about that. And maybe while I'm doing that, Garima, do you want to make sure that you put into the chat that link to our website and those events that you spoke about?
Yes.
But how did online co-design go for you? I have to say it went surprisingly well and surprisingly smoothly. We had to have more staff involvement. We had when we were doing running the class, for every 2 residents, we have a staff member there sitting with them to set up the iPad and join, as opposed to before we could have one staff member, one rec therapist overseeing an entire room. It's not the same. It would have been lovely to be able to have more physical interaction. But it was really exciting to see students and residents still figure out ways to interact with each other, to play music, to show movies, to play I Spy games across their rooms, to be able to still hold up objects and talk about objects. And we still did drawing exercises as well. So yeah, I think it worked relatively well overall. And we do a lot of screen sharing, and a lot of what you saw is we use a platform called Miro, which is sort of like a big open whiteboard collaborative sharing platform. And we use that for almost all of our virtual engagement in all contexts.
Great, thank you. Garima, Morgan, did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think it was sort of, because we were all thrust into this new space together, we all had to sort of learn from the ground up. And so that was a way in which we were able to sort of, figure things out at the same pace. And that was definitely a different way of, shifting and reimagining the power that we were able to hold and share in these environments.
Yeah, it can certainly be very challenging. I have a question for the group. I've done a little bit of work and I've had some time in long-term care. One of the things that we recognize is building relationships is going to be central to developing any kind of forward movement with residents and with the staff. Have any of you considered or involved family members in the work that you've done? because that's an area that we're looking at as well, and it's an area where I think there's a lot of meaning for in terms of relationships with the residents.
Garima, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I can speak to that a little bit. So while we were designing the app, one of the key stakeholders that we were engaging with were family partners and caregivers of people that were living in care home settings. And we had 3 workshops with them, all virtually, and really just they have so much insights to share about their loved ones, and also how involved they are in just the larger process of caregiving and things like that. And it's just felt really important to engage that group. And yeah, we learned a whole lot of things around their experiences, and also the experiences of their loved ones.
Yeah, I'll just add, we have included family members a little bit in some of the other projects that we shared about as well. And I think definitely in the VCH Come Alive sort of a culture change work, it really is apparent that there is sort of, work to be done around how we use those relationships in long-term care, and how we can sort of figure out how that family partner and staff relationship can work, and how communication can work even better.
Nice, thank you. And I see we're at time, so there's just a few housekeeping notes that I'd like to go over. But I'd like to thank Kaylee, Garima, Morgan, all of you for your wonderful presentation and sharing your information and experience. It's really nice to see this kind of work happen. And I'd also like to make a thank you to Marina, who is our tech support, working in the background, making sure that we don't screw up. So thank you, Marina. And if you would be able to put up the last slide. There's just a few housekeeping notes that we need to look after. Marina, are you there? Oh, maybe she's gone. Okay, we do have session 4B, I believe, beginning in a few moments. So please, sessions 5A to 5E will start at 11 a.m. We have a little short break. Remember to view the e-posters on the left menu. I went through them. There are some really fascinating ones. All of them are really, really well done. And it's a really great way to see the larger landscape of work in this area. If you're going to do a selfie, use the live snap function on the left of your menu as well. And if you are going to be posting to social media or looking on social media for activities related to this, our hashtag is PPF2022. So thank you all very much for participating in this panel. Thank you to the speakers, and I hope you have a great rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for moderating for us.
Yes, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thanks, everyone.